Hello, welcome to this series. In this YouTube series, I am going to break down some of the key steps in how I healed through complex trauma. And more specifically, the symptoms, the responses, all the coping mechanisms, the confusion, the stress, the anxiety, the depression, everything that was associated with the experience I'd had growing up and in my early adulthood. In this series, we're going to look specifically at some of the key ways that helped, especially in hindsight, looking back, what really helped in that process. For me, that was a process of reconnecting with myself, really getting grounded in the reality of what was going on, accepting where I was, what situation and circumstances I was currently living in, and what had led to that. It was a process of understanding my own mind, how I was thinking, how I was responding to the world, why I was making the decisions I was. We'll unpack all of that and to really get back with the basics of reconnecting with my body, regulating my body, being able to understand my basic needs and the additional needs I had while I was coping with all of these trauma symptoms. Hello, my name is Terri Shield. I am host here at Love School and on YouTube. And I am a trauma, abuse, neglect survivor. And I'm also a curious deep diver who's explored many different tangents of life. And now I'm in a process of understanding what helped me heal, bringing all my knowledge, all of my skills and experience, and putting it together in content like this in the Love School space that I create to help people like you, to help you on your personal journey of healing, to understand maybe some new insights or to understand just foundations of health and well-being that are natural. So anyone can do them, holistic, so that they affect all of who we are and help shape our lives in a more positive direction. And I create free content like this, videos, blogs, but I also create courses and mentor people. So, what's key to all of the content that I share and that I'm always talking about? So, if you're not new here, you've probably heard this before. If you are, this might be the first time you've maybe considered recovery from this perspective. We focus on three main pillars or foundations of recovery. And at Love School, we're focusing on loving yourself, learning how to love others, and learning to love the process of life, of embracing our existence with whatever might come our way and finding a way to make the most of it, appreciate the experience. And we're also focusing on healing and recovery, which are two slightly different concepts. One, healing is mending the wounds from our past, from our experiences, the hurts, finding a way to actually mend them. They're never going to go away. These experiences happened, but finding a way to stop that being such a pain or a vulnerability in our lives. And then recovery, what do we do now? What do we do? How do we adjust our lives to a better heading? How do we figure out who we are, especially after something like complex trauma experiences, which could have been lifelong? Who are we without those? Who are we without all these symptoms controlling our lives? And that's the recovery process. It's a process of like recovering ourselves, recovering yourself, recovering who you are. Within that, there are three pillars that are foundational to the work and the content that we share here and on Love School. One is an ecosystem mindset, understanding that everything is connected to everything else. We are part of nature. Nature is part of us. We are natural beings and we are one system ecosystem that is made up of lots of other systems, and everything within those systems are connected. So when we make a change in one area, it affects other areas. This can be why our entire life can eventually become taken over, especially by something like complex trauma. Within that ecosystem mindset that we look at is the holistic aspect of healing and recovery. So we look at body, mind, spirit, our emotions, our energy, and we also look at our relationships and our environments, because all of that has an impact on who we are, how we're showing up in the world, how we experience life. So another pillar of healing is getting into them core wounds, understanding ourselves, being able to gain knowledge and insight on what is going on for us in our experience and why. And that process is called shadow work. And we're going to talk a lot about shadow work in this particular series because it's so helpful for trauma recovery. The final key foundation is life design. And life design is a process. Paying attention to your life, figuring out what works for you, figuring out what doesn't work for you, and redirecting your life towards something that's better, something that works for you better. Creating a lifestyle that you want, that supports your wellness, that supports, first of all, your recovery journey, and then ongoing, how can I maintain good health and well-being? And we do that through tools, through creating plan, through consideration, through making observations of ourselves and seeing ourselves as a work in progress that's always changing, that we can direct ourselves and co-create our experience with life through some conscious attention. So in this series, exploring how I heal through complex trauma, we're going to cover a few different areas. First of all, we're going to dive into a little bit about trauma. Not too deeply because YouTube obviously isn't the space for that, and we have more dedicated content where you can really sit with that and understand it better over at Love School. But for this series, just a brief overview of what trauma is, how we can be traumatized, and how that trauma can affect us, short-term and long-term, because knowledge is power. The more you know about trauma, the more you know about trauma recovery, trauma responses. It gives you the power of awareness, the power of choice, and especially if we have been in situations of abuse or neglect, we can feel incredibly powerless, and we can be living in that state of confusion, powerlessness, not really understanding what's happening for us, what's going on, and that's kind of contributing to the whole situation that we're living in. So knowledge in this case is power. The more you understand, the more aware you are, the more you are stepping out of that state of powerlessness and into more of an empowered state of mind and way of being. We're also going to briefly look into ways that you can do straight away to start reconnecting with your body. Often we learn to cope with trauma and stress by dissociating, by repressing ourselves, and we're not fully connected with our experience. We're not actually fully feeling what's going on. In fact, we might be avoiding feeling so much it's controlling our entire life. So learning how to ground, learning how to regulate your body, learning how to be present with yourself, become friends again with your body, starts to reduce stress and creates a more beneficial foundation for healing and recovery. In the series, we're also going to look at how you can learn to master your mind. In response to trauma, our mind, because our nervous system's dysregulated, our mind can become dysregulated. We can constantly be externalizing our thoughts, not really understanding what's going on for us, but we can change that. We can take control of our mind. It's our mind. But without knowing the skills, we don't know what's going on. So through some of the videos, I'm going to explain the process of shadow work, understanding a little bit better how your mind works and how we can use that understanding to actually start reconditioning ourselves for wellness, confidence, and embrace the healing and recovery journey. Healing and recovery isn't always a straightforward process, but what can make it more difficult is not understanding what helps, not understanding what direction we want to go in, not understanding what's going on for us, and going through it alone. So this series is designed so you can gain that understanding. Like I say, step into your empowerment and know you're not alone. There's many of us that sadly have experienced trauma, that we have experienced abuse or neglect in our early life, throughout our lives, but it is possible to recover. Just to introduce my story a little bit, I've survived many traumatic experiences that started in a complex household that was also at the same time incredibly normal. My parents separated. I was brought up by an overworked, financially strained mother who didn't have the capacity to care for us in the way that my sister and I probably needed. There was also a really stressful dynamic because of that between my sister and I, and the household was chaotic. There was a lot of stress and there was a lot of control in the house. Mum also had kind of adopted that 50s style of let them cry out, we had to stay out of her space. So there was a emotional distance in our household. Meanwhile, my dad was absent. He was often coming in and out. We didn't have that any sort of kind of stable relationship, comforting, emotional connection with our parents. There was addiction involved in the family dynamics. There was often a lot of conflict, a lot of underlying stuff going on. There was an undercurrent of sexual abuse, and just always felt like we were either fighting or keeping secrets and hiding things that was going on. So obviously that wasn't an ideal situation to grow up in, and it caused me a lot of confusion in my early adult life. That led me to a lot of other traumatic experiences. Just seemed to keep happening, and I didn't know how to regulate. I didn't know how to process my emotions. I didn't know how to cope with life. I was like blazing along, doing things, and all this stuff kept happening, and I kept going and going and going. And my life also had a lot of ups. I was very ambitious. I was, very driven, to the point of burnout, especially when all of these traumatic experiences were happening and I didn't know how to process them and I didn't know how to take care of myself properly in all of it. So that all came to a head. I am a suicide survivor, and since then I kind of changed and redirected my life and have been on a healing and recovery journey. Now, that didn't end all the stress and trauma. Life still happens. But over the years, I have learned lots of skills, and now I'm in a point where I want to share what I feel is helpful and offer a space for the people who are on that longer term healing journey, who, like I ended up doing, are probably having to rely on themselves for that healing process. I found that the medical approach didn't work for me. I did have had a list of many conditions and diagnoses in my life, but there was never any solutions, and I wanted one. And I was also very spiritually attuned, and that didn't seem to be catered for or considered in the fields of mental health recovery and psychiatry and all that. And to be honest, there was a lot of fear around disclosing that because I was scared to be, institutionalized. So anyway, I went on an alternative route of education and healing, and that's where my insight comes from. So if this sounds like something that you might be interested in and is helpful, I am going to be releasing a video every week for the next few weeks, diving in a little bit more into what I've covered in this, how I healed through complex trauma, some of the key insights that helped, reconnecting with the body, understanding your mind, learning all about trauma. And if these have already been published, you can access them straight away. They'll be on a playlist all together for you to be able to watch in your own time, in your own space. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel so you get notifications and you know when new content is coming out. I'll also link in the description helpful content that already exists over at Love School. So if you're a bit eager to get into some of the content, that's all there, including blog posts and any free resources. All will be linked in the description below. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.